The place where the truth doesn't knock, it walks right in. He was kissing her. That was the first thing my brain could process. The lights were dim, jazz playing somewhere in the background, wine glasses clinking, and she was kissing him like she forgot the world was still spinning. It wasn't even subtle. Her hand was on his chest. His fingers slid into her hair. And for a second I thought maybe I was looking at someone else. Someone who just looked like my wife. But no, it was her. Rena, the same woman who told me 2 hours ago she had a headache and needed to lie down early because of her morning presentation. Except here, she was not in bed, not in pajamas, not even alone. She was glowing, laughing, wearing red lipstick I hadn't seen in months and a dress that still had a price tag on it when I checked our credit card bill last week. And the man? I didn't know him. That made it worse, somehow. If it had been a coworker, an old friend, someone I could scream at, maybe I'd feel less invisible. I stood there like a misplaced piece of furniture. People passed me laughing, clinking glasses. One guy bumped my shoulder and didn't even turn around. I waited for her to notice me. Maybe she'd recoil. Maybe guilt would pour across her face. But she didn't even blink. So, I walked right up to them. I tapped her arm. She turned slowly like I was interrupting something sacred. She saw me, eyes widening for just half a breath. Then, narrowing, I said, "You just ended our marriage." She didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't say sorry. Instead, she crossed her arms and said with a voice I barely recognized, "You're wrong, that's all." 2 words that punched me harder than anything I've ever felt. I didn't argue, I didn't scream. I just turned around and left. But I wish I hadn't, because if I had stayed even 5 more minutes, I might have heard what she said next to him. And maybe then I would have known that this wasn't the first time. It was just the first time I caught her. I didn't sleep that night, not a minute. I just lay there on my brother's couch, staring at the ceiling fan, letting it spin and spin like my thoughts. I kept replaying her words. "You're wrong." How could she say that? What part of what I saw was wrong? Was it the kiss, the timing, or the part where I assumed she still wanted to be married? My chest kept tightening like I was bracing for an explosion that never came. You think when something like this happens, there'd be yelling, maybe sobbing, some chaotic unraveling. But instead, it was just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. The next morning, I drove past our house twice before stopping. I wasn't sure what I expected. Her car wasn't in the driveway. The porch light was still on, that little amber bulb that I replaced last month because she said the last one was too harsh. Everything looked normal, and that's what killed me. I unlocked the front door, stepped into the kitchen, and found a note. Not handwritten, just typed out in that cold default font and printed on our office paper like it was an itinerary. It read, "I need time. You misread the situation. We'll talk when emotions cool." Misread. I stood 3 feet from them, her mouth on his, and now I'm being told I imagined it. I felt like I was going insane. My hands were shaking when I opened her laptop. I know it's a breach of trust, but tell me what trust was left to protect. I clicked through tabs, emails, calendar, invites. Nothing. She was clean. Too clean. That's when I noticed something strange. A Google Doc with no title, shared from an anonymous email address. It was tucked away in a folder named July Slides. I opened it and suddenly everything made a sick kind of sense because in that doc was a list. Names, dates, locations. One was from 6 weeks ago. The hotel just off I-73. Another one marked with a star said, "NYC trip confirmed." But what hit me the hardest was the entry 3 lines down. Vista Grand Post Press Dinner. First kiss in public. Make it count. Make it count. It wasn't spontaneous. It was scheduled, planned like a business pitch. And I was never supposed to see it. I stared at that document for a long time, rereading each line until the words stopped making sense. It wasn't the fact that she was cheating that hollowed me out. It was how calculated it all was. She treated their affair like a campaign rollout. I guess that makes sense. She's a strategist, after all. Everything with her has a timeline, an angle, a backup plan. I used to admire that about her. Now it makes me sick. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Maybe part of me was afraid she'd find a way to talk her way out of even this. So, instead, I printed the document, one copy, and folded it into the inside pocket of my old coat. The one she used to say made me look like someone who got lost on the way to a poetry reading. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove to my parents' place. My mom opened the door, looked at my face, and didn't ask a single question. She just said, "Coffee?" I nodded, sat down, and finally allowed myself to fall apart. But here's where things started to get worse, and I know how that sounds. Worse than catching your wife planning public kisses with another man. Yeah, because 2 days later, she showed up at our house with a calm expression, grocery bags in hand, and started acting like nothing happened. Like I hadn't seen anything. Like the note she left didn't exist. I watched her unload milk into the fridge, humming a tune from a show we used to binge together, and I stood in the hallway wondering if I was in some kind of twisted dream. Then she turned to me and said, "You've been acting strange, Irvin. Do you want to talk about what's bothering you?" Me acting strange. It hit me like a slap. She was trying to flip the script to turn this into a story where I was the distant, suspicious husband, where I was hiding something. She was weaponizing normally, using it like camouflage. So I said nothing. Not yet. Because if she was this good at staging her side of the story, I had to be smarter, and I had to find out what else she was hiding before I made my next move. But I didn't know that someone else had already gotten involved, and that they were watching both of us. 3 days after Rena came home pretending nothing happened, I received a text from an unknown number. No name, no greeting, just a blurry photo. I tapped on it expecting spam, maybe a wrong number. But when it loaded, my hands went cold. It was her. Not just Rena, but Rena with him. The same man from the gala. Same green dress, same beige suit. Only this time they weren't kissing. They were in a hotel room laughing, her head thrown back, a champagne bottle in his hand, his jacket off, her shoes missing. And there was a timestamp. It wasn't from the night of the event, it was from the next morning. I didn't know who sent it or why, but the message that followed was simple. You deserve to know all of it. This was never about one night. I just sat there, phone in my lap, unable to move. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was proof that someone else knew. Someone was watching her, too. Maybe him. Maybe both of them. I forwarded the number to a backup app, took screenshots, and saved everything to an encrypted folder. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wanted more. That night, Rena asked if I wanted to go to dinner. Dinner. She smiled like a woman unburdened by guilt, like someone who'd never stared into the face of the person she destroyed. I said yes. I smiled back. I held held the door open for her like I always used to. She joked about how I was finally wearing that not-so-ugly navy shirt. And in that moment, I realized just how much she believed her performance. She wasn't scared. She wasn't ashamed. She thought I was buying it, that she could erase it all with time and small talk. At the restaurant, I excused myself to the restroom halfway through her story about office politics. I didn't go to the restroom. I went to her car. I knew her passcode. It hadn't changed in years. I unlocked her phone. I was shaking. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. And then I found it. A hidden folder in her photo gallery labeled Inspo. Inside were screenshots, dozens of them, of text messages of my messages, emails I'd sent her over the years, birthday cards I'd written, even a picture of the socks I'd tried to give her that night. But they weren't saved like memories. They were saved like evidence. For what? I didn't know. But that night I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just cheating. This was preparation. The next morning I got another message from the same unknown number. No words this time. Just a voice memo. I didn't want to open it. I was scared of what I'd hear. But curiosity is cruel. I hit play, and I'll never forget the sound that came through my phone. It was Rena's voice. Calm, icy, like she was giving a presentation. If he asks questions, stick to the story. He's not confrontational. He avoids conflict. Make him believe it was all a misunderstanding, and we'll have time to clean up the rest. I sat there staring at the wall, fists clenched so tight my knuckles cracked. I had been married to this woman for a decade, and now I was hearing her discuss me like I was a problem to manage, not a person to love. My phone buzzed again. Another message. You need to wake up, Irvin. She's not just cheating. She's erasing you. I didn't know who was behind the messages. I didn't know if I could trust them. But the more I heard, the more I believed them, and that terrified me. Because I wasn't just dealing with an affair. I was part of something carefully scripted. And I didn't even know what role I was playing. That afternoon, I called in sick to work and drove 2 towns over to a cafe I knew she never visited. I needed space to think. I opened her phone back up again and checked the GPS logs. There were addresses saved that weren't mine. One caught my eye. A name I hadn't seen in years. Callum Given, Rena's old co-worker from 5 years ago. They'd lost touch, or so she said. He moved to Oregon, got married, had a kid. I even saw the baby pictures once, taped to her old corkboard. But apparently Callum was back in town and Rena had visited his condo 3 times in the past 2 weeks, including the night before the gala. Something twisted in my stomach. I found his profile online. His wife was still in Oregon, still posting smiling family photos, still clueless. I didn't know if he was the guy, but I knew I couldn't trust anything Rena had told me anymore. I sat in that cafe staring out the window, and for the first time I wondered if she had been planning this for longer than I dared imagine. Maybe years. Maybe before I ever suspected a thing. And then I got a final message from the unknown number, one that sent a chill down my spine. Look inside the black box under your bed. You were never supposed to find it. I don't know how long I stood in the hallway staring at the bedroom door. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 30. My mind kept looping that last message. Look inside the black box under your bed. It didn't make sense. We didn't have a black box. At least, not one I remembered. But then again, what did I really know anymore? I slowly pushed open the bedroom door like it might explode on contact. Everything looked normal. Our bed still made, her pillow still fluffed, the faint scent of lavender from her sides still lingering. I dropped to my knees and reached beneath the frame, fingers brushing against loose socks, a couple of old charging cables, and then something solid, rectangular, cold. I pulled it out. A matte black lockbox, the kind you buy at office supply stores to keep tax papers or passports. No key, no combination dial, just a digital keypad with low battery beeping faintly. My hands were shaking so hard I had to sit back on the carpet just to think. I had no code, no clues, but my brain went on autopilot. First guess our anniversary. Rejected. Then her birthday, denied. Then, for whatever reason, I typed 0922, the date of our engagement. Click, it opened. Inside were three things: an envelope, a disposable phone, and a small leather-bound notebook. I didn't even know where to start. I picked up the phone first. It had one message on it, sent, not received, to a number not in my contacts. The message simply said confirmed. He suspects nothing.
Sent 2 weeks ago. I opened the envelope. Next, inside was a printed contract notarized with a logo I didn't recognize. A Shell LLC. Rena's name on the signature line and mine forged. It was a transfer of assets. My name was being removed from the deed to our home. Then the notebook, page after page of dates, amounts, and details. Hotel stays, meeting times, not just with Callum but others' names I didn't recognize, some marked with dollar amounts. At the bottom of the final page, she'd written in neat cursive, "If he catches on before October, cancel. Start fresh somewhere else." Couldn't breathe. My wife hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She was erasing me on paper. She was stealing everything, and she almost got away with it. I sat in silence for nearly an hour. The lockbox opened beside me like a wound. The documents were all real. The signature was almost perfect except for the curl in the R. She always got wrong when trying to mimic mine. I thought about the hundreds of times I trusted her with paperwork, taxes, even my passwords. My whole life had been an open book, and she was the only one I thought would never tear out the ending. I wanted to scream, break something, but I didn't. I just stared. I kept replaying it all, the lies, the coldness in her voice, the ease with which she had rewritten our life. And then my phone buzzed again. A new message from the same unknown number. "She knows you found the box." My throat dried up instantly. I shot to my feet and ran to the windows, pulling the blinds. My heart was in my ears. I grabbed the lockbox and shoved everything back inside. I didn't know how they knew. Had she planted a camera, a tracker? I'd already been paranoid, now I was bordering on unhinged. But they were right. She came home not 20 minutes later, holding takeout and smiling, like she hadn't just tried to erase my existence behind my back. She handed me a carton of noodles. "You like these, right?" she asked casually. Her tone was so light, it was terrifying. I played along, acting confused, nodding slowly like a man who still believed in her. She didn't mention the lockbox. Neither did I. But that night, after she fell asleep, I checked her phone again, and I found something I hadn't before. A draft message unsaved, unsent. It read, "He's not as blind as I thought. We'll need to act faster. I'll push the mental health angle. If I can get him to break down in public." I stared at the screen. She was setting me up, planning to make me look unstable. The signs were all there. Gaslighting, control, disappearing files, whispering doubt into every quiet moment. She wanted to ruin me so thoroughly that if I screamed the truth, no one would believe it.
I put the phone down and walked to the garage, hands trembling, mouth dry.
I opened the storage cabinet, reached under an old toolbox and pulled out a small black envelope I'd hidden a year ago. It was the one thing I never told Rena about. Inside was a copy of the prenup she didn't know I had rewritten after our 5th anniversary just in case. And it had a clause she never expected. The prenup was my last card. I had revised it years ago after a conversation with my father, who once told me, "Love blindly, but protect wisely."
I had quietly met with a lawyer on our 5th anniversary after noticing how Rena handled our finances. At the time, I felt guilty, like I was betraying her trust. But now, that one paranoid move was the only reason I still had a claim to my name. The clause, if either party attempted to remove the other from jointly owned property without written consent, it would trigger an automatic forfeiture of any shared assets. She didn't know. She never even suspected. I didn't confront her with it, not directly. I called my lawyer, emailed the scanned documents, and within 3 days the paperwork was filed. Quietly, cleanly. I stayed silent, kept eating dinners with her, let her keep spinning her little performance, thinking I was swallowing it all. The whole time I was quietly building my escape. The day she was served, I wasn't even home. I had already packed. My name was cleared from every account, the house locked, my documents secured. I left her a printed copy of the prenup on the kitchen counter with a sticky note. "You were wrong. I saw everything." She called me 9 times that night, left voicemails full of tears, rage, then begging, but I didn't answer. There was nothing left to explain. I wasn't the fool anymore. I was free. It's been 3 months now. I'm living in a small apartment with cheap furniture, but peace has never felt so expensive or worth it. I've started therapy, stopped apologizing for things I didn't do, and for the first time in years, I'm building something just for me. Rena. She moved out of the house. Turns out people don't line up to date someone whose idea of romance is paperwork and manipulation. To anyone watching this, trust your gut. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means strategy. And walking away can be the loudest thing you ever do. This has been my story on Reddit Confessions.